1. The first chilly day of October, my boyfriend and I decided to have a small fire behind our house. He was already outside starting and tending the fire, while I was still inside grabbing things to take with me. I grabbed my boyfriend's lunchbox, put a few snacks in it, my house keys and cell phone. I figured since it wasn't blazing hot as usual, I'd make me some instant hot chocolate. I grabbed a coffee mug out of the cabinet. My aunt had given me this mug about a year ago, and it was white and pink with a cute cartoon fox on the side. It was about twice as tall as a normal coffee cup, with a handle, but the bottom was small enough to fit in the car cup holder. Anyway, I remember reading the directions, measuring out 8 ounces of water and a quarter cup of powder. I grabbed my lunchbox and the hot chocolate and headed outside. I went through the chain-link fence and sat my stuff down in the collapsible camping chair. I told my boyfriend I would be back with Alan. We have a 20-pound cat, and I'd like to bring him in the backyard so he can get some exercise whenever possible. I went back inside, put Alan's harness on him, and carried him to the fence. Once I was in the fence, I put him down and locked the gate behind me, since there was a gap in between the gate and I didn't want him to somehow wiggle his way out. As soon as the lock clicked, I realized I didn't have the gate key with me, just my house keys. I went over and asked my boyfriend if he happened to have the gate key, and he said no, but I'll climb over when we want to go back in. It wasn't a very tall fence, so he could easily climb it. I apologized and sat down to stare at the fire. I immediately started sipping on my hot chocolate. After several minutes of constant sipping, my hot chocolate was gone. I remember thinking to myself, man, I shouldn't have drank that so fast. Now I don't have any drink. Whatever. I stared at the fire some more and small-talked with my boyfriend and frequently looked for Alan to make sure he was still in the fence. A few minutes go by and I reached down for my hot chocolate, forgetting it was out. As soon as I grabbed it, I remembered it was empty and tilted the cup a little so I could make sure there wasn't a sip left. I could see the white bottom of the cup with a very small drop left at the bottom. Not even enough to try and coax it out. So I put it back down and don't touch it anymore. After about 30 to 45 minutes of sitting by the fire, I was ready to go inside. My boyfriend went to go grab Alan while I gathered my lunchbox with my phone and leftover snacks in it. I also picked up my cup that was empty and headed to the gate. My boyfriend had Alan in his arms and told me to hold him while he jumped over and got the gate keys from inside. Since I was already holding stuff, I just told him to put Alan on the ground. I sat down on my butt on the ground and held Alan's harness with my left hand. I set my lunchbox on the ground to my right. I needed a free hand so I could carry Alan. I wanted to put my cup in the lunchbox, so I thought, let me shake that drop out so it doesn't get on my phone and ruin it somehow. I tipped the cup over pretty fast because I was prepared to give it a good shake to get the drop out, like you would the last drop of ketchup. When I tipped it over, a full cup's worth, 8 ounces, dumped on the ground and splashed on my right foot. I obviously didn't measure it because it was sinking into the ground at that point, but it looked like the exact same amount that I had poured in prior to drinking it. It took me a second to realize what happened as I sat there with the cup turned over, and then my jaw dropped. I flipped it right side up again, and I could see the dark remnants of hot chocolate in the bottom and the side of the cup where it poured out. As I tried to start making sense of it, my boyfriend came to the fence to unlock it. I immediately said, "Babe, did you put anything in this cup?" He said, "No. You had hot chocolate in there." I said, "Yeah, but I drank that a long time ago." His eyes got big and his eyebrows went up and said, "I don't know then." I was so confused and freaked out, I told him to carry Alan inside. I told him what happened as we walked back inside. He didn't really have any words or know what to say. I put that darn cup on the coffee table and didn't touch it again until midday the following day. I would sometimes walk past it and slowly peek in there, scared to death it would be full again. Nothing paranormal or freaky has ever happened to me personally. So, with this being the first time I couldn't explain what had just happened, I was bewildered to say the least. If this is supposed to mean something, I'd love to know people's thoughts. My mama committed suicide about 2 years ago, and I kinda want to believe it was her somehow. But I don't know why she'd come back just to give me some more hot chocolate. 2. Roughly 2 years ago, I randomly found what looked to be a very old book. earliest date entry being 1896 with 5 entries, oldest being 1923, which would be 2 years before my great-grandmother was born, that one would journal in a spot that it shouldn't have been found in. It was very out of place. Upon inspection, I found that the pages were filled with well-wishes that I can only assume were meant for my great-times-3 grandmother. I say that because a lot of entries weren't addressed to anyone by name, and when it is, there are a couple of variations, i.e. Lola, Ola, Ala. We weren't positive of my great-great-great-grandmother's name, but my mother thinks it could be Lola, considering there are baby handprints and footprints, and my great-great-grandmother Ella, and my great-grandmother has hand and footprints in the book. I think it's fair to assume the book belonged to my great-great-great-grandmother, since who else would document hand footprints? I suppose it's possible an aunt did. Edit. The handprint I thought said Elma might actually have said Emma, E-H-M-A, and it is dated a year prior to when Elma is believed to have been born. However, when it comes to my GG, Eloise Parks, her name is spelled incorrectly in her handprint. An E was added to the end, but we and she didn't spell it that way. I assume her mother or grandmother wouldn't spell her name wrong, but then again, my family spells my name wrong. Eloise, who we call Mima. My GG was not born at the time of the earliest entry. There are a few things I'd like input on if anyone is willing. Firstly, I'd like some help deciphering what the words say. I'm aware that seems unintelligent considering English is my first and only language I'm fluent in, but it's 1. Very old, 1880s through 1930s. 2. A good portion is written in pencil and therefore super faded. 3. It's written in a form of cursive I'm not really well acquainted with, and sloppy cursive at that. 4. There seems to be a lot of Old English within it, which I'm also not well versed in. Secondly, I'd like to know if anyone recognizes these weird symbols that are in the book that someone used to write her message in. Luckily, I'm almost positive the code is written in English directly under it, although I'm not sure. I've done my own research trying to figure out if the symbols are something many people know about or if it's a personal code, but to no avail. I also find it bizarre that what would assumingly be the translation has a line that states to remember the motto above. I don't know why one would refer to a motto when the coded message is as far up as it can be. Lastly, what are your thoughts on why I would magically find this book my family nor I remember? My mother and I are the caregivers for my great-grandmother, the granddaughter or great-granddaughter, of whom we believe the book originally belonged to for many years. My mother was especially close to her. Her belongings were gone through many times. She had dementia and really enjoyed pulling out our family heirlooms so she can tell us the story behind everything. Aside from that, my mother and I had to go through her stuff after she passed away, and neither of us remember ever seeing the book. A little more about its discovery. I've never had any of her belongings before. That is, my great-grandmother's, who would have been the only one I could have gotten the book from. I know I haven't. I also moved quite frequently, meaning I've packed and unpacked all my belongings many times. Surely I would have seen it, right? After all, considering the only period of time I would have been given this book would be no later than 2006-ish. The amount of times I've moved since then is baffling. Here's an example. I will write it with the exact punctuation that this person used, and I will put the words I'm unsure of if I'm reading it correctly in parentheses. Example of 1 page. Clifton, full stop, okay. Dear friend, within this book, so pure and white, mine? But friends, 5, same, soon, shrine, to do so, rill, W-R-I-L-L-E, and may each time with friendship given, fired, she, readers, cedars, to heaven. Your friend Bessie Loy, P, R, Mill, full stop, or Mel, G.J., March 20, 1896. Note, the 20 has an east-west colon, and a line directly under that. 3. I have not been feeling well the last couple of days because of the weather switch, I'm assuming. Bones getting old, maybe. And I asked my little brother if he can come over and give me a hand cleaning. He is 3 years older than my oldest kid, so he doesn't have old folk weather bones like me. Anyway, 2 of my puppies were getting under his feet, and since he didn't want to step on them, 6-week-old Perth puppies, he put them in the puppy pen. The puppy pen isn't really a puppy pen. Basically, I zip-tied together several wire shelves from a shelving unit I bought at either Walmart or Target. And all was good until the boy puppy decided he wanted out. I watched him climb the wire like a ladder. I watched him make his way on top of a rubber tote bin that was next to the puppy pen, and I watched him jump down on the floor. Not only that, I had to comfort him because he hurt and scared himself when he jumped down. Fast forward about an hour later. I'm looking for something, and my brother is helping me. I tell him, look in the bin, and he lifts a box, crockpot box, out of the bin, and then he goes, there's a puppy in there, and pulls out the same puppy that I know was just on the floor. My brother was outside having a puff when the puppy jumped down. I'm 420 friendly, but not inside my house. Then he went to the store, and when he came back, I asked him to help me find the thing I was looking for. That is another story which I'll add on at the end. I have no idea how the puppy got in the bin. The puppy is too small to have jumped in the bin, and I doubt the puppy would have climbed back up the wire shelving to jump in the bin. Lastly, the bin and puppy pen are in my direct line of sight. I should have seen the puppy climbing up the shelving, just like I saw him climbing out. If anything, I was more sensitive to escaping puppies because the other might have got it in her mind to emulate her brother. And to the addendum story. The thing I was looking for was a container of sugar. I was making a pot of tea and looking for the sugar and could not find it. I called my oldest child to ask her if she knew where the sugar was, and she said no. I asked her if she was sure she had not taken it upstairs and put it in her room. She swore up and down she didn't. I had my brother look in her room, and the sugar was there. I called her back and asked her, are you sure you didn't take the sugar upstairs? She swears she didn't. I tell her, honey, your uncle just took it out of there and brought it to me. She was completely shocked, and said she had no idea how the sugar got into her room. She even accused me of trolling her when I teased her about how she was so sure the sugar wasn't in her room. She started getting upset, and I could tell she was acting like she does every time she is falsely accused of something. I'm not the best mom in the world, but my kids and I have a pretty good bond, and neither of them would lie to me over something as petty as this. I believe her when she says she didn't have the sugar in her room, but we can't figure out how the sugar got up there. 4. This was a while ago. Me and my friend used to walk to this bookstore about a mile from my apartment. It was a pretty cool bookstore and had a cafe with great mac and cheese. And the walk was about 25 minutes, so we went there a lot for lunch, and sometimes dinner. This time it was dinner, and it was mid-fall, so it got dark pretty quick. We weren't worried, though. We knew the way and had our phones, and the area was pretty safe. It was, however, a long walk, and we were already tired. Part of it was uphill, but the hill went back down after a bit, so we wondered if we could somehow go around the hill this time. We talked about it for a minute and decided we'd go down a street we'd never been down before, to see if it skipped the hill. This particular side street actually sloped a little downwards, so it seemed reasonable that we'd be able to avoid the hill. Here's where I and my friend checked our phones for the time. We'd already gone 2 of 10 blocks to get home, about 5 minutes worth of the 25-minute walk. It read 8:34, which fits because we left at exactly 8:30. I kept an 8:30 alarm set on my phone back then, so we'd never get home later than 9 p.m., because my mom worried about us alone on the streets at night. We planned on seeing if the new path was faster or not. Off we go down the side street, and at first it seems great. No hill, although we can see the hill we would have been climbing rising on our right. We thought we'd find a great way to cut some unwanted exercise from our mile-long walk. We're thinking we can do this every time. But as we pass the second road we've seen so far that went back to the main road, I noticed that the hill wasn't rising anymore, and it wasn't falling either. And the air feels weird, like it's not moving. And it's really quiet for a street that's right next to a busy road. And it seems darker. Like, not where we're standing, but around us in general. like we're suddenly surrounded by darkness, and the moon is only shining a spotlight onto the spot we're standing on. At this point, I turn to my friend and ask if she wants to head back to the main road, and she nods. She says, yeah, we should go back at the next chance we get. We keep walking, and walking, and walking. I'm thinking it must have been 10 more minutes by now, and we haven't seen any more freaking roads that lead back to our usual path. I imagine how weird it is that there weren't more roads connected to the busy one, and she agrees really quickly, like she was hoping I'd notice how strange it was too, but didn't want to seem crazy. I also ask if it seemed quiet and dark here. She nodded. I suggest we keep walking another few minutes, and if we don't see another street, then we turn around, and she agrees. I think around here is when we decided simultaneously that we ought to grab onto each other, and we hook arms because that's the thing we do when we're scared. It leaves our hands free, but we aren't easily separated. We keep going, and I'm just about to ask if she wants to turn around, and we see it, a road. We speed up. I'm secretly a little worried it'll just disappear, and we turn onto the road and make it back onto the main one. The sound comes rushing back all at once, wind picks up, everything around us brightens, and we unhook our arms relieved. We pull out our phones to find out where the hell we are, because that hill usually only takes us about 10 minutes to go up and down, and we were on the side road for at least 20. As I'm pulling up my map, my friend freezes. She calls my name. I ask what's wrong. She asks me what time it is. I look. I freeze. I've just seen where we are on the map, and I've also just seen what time it is. We were on that dark and eerie side street for 20 minutes. We must have traveled somewhere around 8 blocks. Apparently neither of those things are true because we've traveled 6 blocks, putting us only 2 blocks from home. And the time reads 8:36. We have somehow walked 6 blocks in 2 minutes, which is impossible by itself. But we also did it while feeling like it had been 20 minutes. We stare at each other in shock for a few seconds before we both start cracking up because of how ridiculous this is. Although creepy, it wasn't harmful. We've somehow gained time, and it was like a short impromptu adventure. I remember her asking only half-jokingly if we somehow found and gone through a portal, and I agreed. We repeated a few times on the rest of our walk back that it was insane, that we couldn't believe that happened. Once we were safely back in my apartment, we checked the clock again. It was 8:42, and discussed what we each experienced, and decided that street was definitely really dark, really still, and really quiet. We tried to look for it again the next time she came over, but we couldn't find the street we'd gone down. There were a few that looked similar, but not quite right. A few had similar-looking bushes and trees and a similar layout, but none of them were sloping just a little bit downwards. None of them had those strange qualities. Just to be sure I hadn't dreamt the whole thing, I asked her about it a few months later. I asked her something like, hey, remember that time we fucking portaled 6 blocks in 2 minutes? And she says something like, yeah, that was crazy. I wonder what even happened that night. It's good to know there's another witness so I don't feel crazy. I wish I could find it again. I don't live there anymore, but I think about it sometimes. And I wonder if anyone else has gone through it, and if they even noticed when it happened. 5. Have you ever wondered what happened after a glitch story was told? Some were neatly resolved, others, no, not so much. My own was not. It is the first story in 5 true Glitch in the Matrix stories 106. There were a big pair of scissors that vanished, basically as soon as I put them down, and the junk drawer I normally keep them in was torn apart. For every object I put back, I kept thinking, not scissors. A couple of months later, after opening that drawer many times, I saw a piece of paper that was neatly on top of something, in my otherwise messy drawer. I moved the paper, and it was just big enough to cover, you guessed it, the scissors. What could I do in this situation? Actually, absolutely nothing. Despite knowing my mind couldn't have played tricks on me, acceptance was immediate. At least a chapter closed in the many stories of missing items. Unlike most other people's stories. When the scissors' disappearance happened, I felt like I was in a cluster of odd things, and that things would progressively get weirder, but no, it fizzled out and everything returned to normal. Yes, I was disappointed. Unless you count what took place recently. But it happened much, much later without the aura of strangeness. I know my feelings have misguided me before, so maybe this is a glitch and not a very interesting malfunction of my brain. I will let others decide. After a really bizarre string of not getting to use a working washer, we have public laundry rooms owned by our landlord. I was in a lot of stress because of an upcoming trip. I came to realize the only thing I could actually do was select my favorite clothes items and wash them by hand. Luckily, I have lived under primitive conditions, so having hot water and a bathtub made it bearable, and also, I knew good ways to get things really clean without a huge effort. I hung the wet laundry on a laundry rack in the bathroom. The day of the trip I was going to pack, so I took everything down from the rack and put it on my kitchen table, near my bag. Unfortunately, everything wasn't totally dry, so those things I put in plastic bags to dry when I arrived at my location. Basically, I split the laundry in two, things to pack and things to have ready and clean for when I was going to come back home. I am quite picky about how I treat my shirts, so I stretched them and hung them at the back of a chair. For the rest, I have no idea what I did with it. I've gone through my head thinking about the best way to deal with it. Thing is, I had occupied all the good spots for hanging laundry with the clothes I was going to travel in. So now when I think of it, there was nowhere to put that stuff. I was just glad everything worked out for my laundry drama, chasing working washers, including kicking my laundry basket to topple over in front of the landlord's janitor and trying to talk some sense into him while he claimed I was rude. So I went on the trip. I came back and yes, I could have needed some clean clothes. The two shirts on the chair were there, the rest some pairs of socks, some tank tops, and 2 pairs of training fucking pants totally missing. Before trying to figure out where they would be, where I, in my very stressed mind, would have put them, I thought to myself, they'll show, and I'll remember putting them there. I waited for that for days, and it didn't happen. Then I started to try to figure it out. The strange thing is how I draw a blank about what I would have done with the laundry, apart from putting them on the radiator in the guest room, or throwing them into my closet despite the dampness. That would have been the natural thing for me to do. I checked those places, and I checked exactly everywhere else. Those clothes are no longer in my apartment. The only thing I can come up with is that when I put my damp clothes in plastic bags in my bag, I also put the rest of the laundry in a plastic bag. There is a possibility I then confused it with trash and threw them away. I mean, even if I would have had to gone out of my way to take that plastic bag and put them by the trash bags, and without reason putting them in a plastic bag from the start. Stress could have made that happen. Or maybe the clothes simply traveled to another point in the universe. If you find a pair of very fuzzy, horribly baby blue socks that you don't recognize in your sock drawer, they're mine. I'd rather like them back. 6. I forgot about a weird experience my family and I had a couple days ago. So, about 2 years ago, my mom noticed the pooper scooper for the cat went missing. Just wasn't next to the cat box. She looked everywhere. On the ground. Anywhere the dog or cats would have moved it to, but she just couldn't find it. I was at school, so I didn't see it myself, but I thought it was pretty weird. Fast forward a couple months. She had already bought a new one and was using it since she couldn't find the original. And the same thing happened. She kept it in the same place, and again it just disappeared without a trace. I was at school this time too, so I didn't see it again. This continued happening about 2 more times, I think, where it would just disappear entirely and my mom would buy a new one. Until it happened one last time. And not only did I happen to be home this time when it did, but it also happened to me. So, I cleaned out the litter box using the pooper scooper and put it back on the shelf where it goes. I took all the bags out of the cans around the house and took them out. And when I came back in, I went to my computer, which is across the room in the living room, and sat down, going back to whatever I was going to do before she told me to do it. A couple minutes later, she looked at me angry, asking where I put the scooper. So I told her right where it always goes, but she told me to get up and look, and she was right. It wasn't there. Now I know I put it on the shelf, so where did it go? The dog was outside in the yard, and I checked to see if my cats would have jumped up and hid it under the bed or something. But they were both asleep on the bed. So after this, my mom just got really angry, and I kinda got freaked out myself. She just said out loud for whoever or whatever it was that was taking it to stop. About 13 years ago we moved into our old house, and we later found out the family before us dog got ran over by their car when backing out of the garage. So when we moved in, we saw this ghost dog for a couple years until my mom did the same thing, and it went away after that. And like that dog has stopped happening, it hasn't disappeared since. I'm usually one to try to come up with rational explanations for stuff, but I really don't have one for this. I don't think anyone could have taken this scooper and thrown it away in that time or anything, because I just took out the garbage a couple minutes later, and there was nothing in the trash. I guess my mom could have hidden it herself, but why would she do that? And she swears she didn't, so I really don't know what to make of it. 7. Okay, I just had the weirdest fucking experience. It seems my experiences keep topping the rest. First, a disclaimer. I have narcolepsy, and sometimes I can be in a state of awake and asleep at the same time. When I do, my body gets paralyzed, and when that happens, I see the most interesting things. If I allow myself to look. So it can be argued I'm just dreaming this, but the way I see it is more like a ghost image over a real image. I'll share this one that just happened. Okay, so here goes. I was reading Journey of Souls, as recommended. Awesome. On my iPad while I was waiting for the lady I watched to be ready so I can take her to work. I work with 2 adults with developmental disabilities. I started to see a leafy branch hanging in the doorway. It was just an outline of it though, like it wasn't really there, like a faint invisible outline. I was staring at it, and I can feel my neck muscles losing strength as it became more pronounced, meaning my body was going to become paralyzed. I look away to stop it, and it stopped until curiously got the better of me, and looked at it again, trying to make it out. The feeling starts again, and it gets clearer. I start to feel the muscles start to weaken. I looked around the room, and the rest of the room had vines all over it as well, like you would see in an abandoned house. My neck muscles fail pretty much, and my head is hanging down looking at my feet. This is why people assume we fall asleep out of nowhere. That's just wrong, I'm paralyzed. Anyway, I see more plant-type stuff on the floor. I see a vibe and plant material near my foot, and at that point, my phone drops onto the fluffy plant material, because my hands are too weak to hold it. The fucking vines come out of it, and it starts swirling around my phone, and my feet circling it. I could hear the sound of them swirling. They never do get 100% vivid, though, more of a grainy ghost image. I'm freaking out, struggling to get my head up so I can move my head and break free from this state. Which I can if I fight hard enough, or wait it out, but no way was I waiting just in case there was really some reality to this. After about 10 seconds, I do manage to move my head up enough for my muscles to respond, and jump up and run away from the spot. Once I do, of course, any outline is gone of that other house. I try to look at the initial vine again, and see it slightly, so I try to snap a picture before anything happened. But no, it didn't show anything. Am I really just dreaming? I mean, this was the house, but it feels like I'm seeing it in another reality. And this reality just happened to have killer man-eating vines. This is 100% not fiction, but definitely could all be a medical condition. But I really hope it's not. I hope because of this I'm able to see something a lot of people can't see as easily. 8. My cousin told me this story a few days ago, and he gave me permission to share it here. On March 25th, 2019, my cousin, a sophomore in high school, entered a romantic relationship with a good friend of his. They had plans to FaceTime later that night. The last thing he remembers is waiting for his girlfriend to call him. The time was 10:30 p.m. The next thing in his memory is where this story starts. He woke up, not as if he was coming out of sleep, but snapping out of a daydream or a daze. It was 12:30 a.m. He was laying in bed on his stomach, and his head was propped up on his hands. He looked at his phone and saw that he was currently FaceTiming his girlfriend. She was wearing the hoodie that he gave her that day in painting. Except for this moment, he has no memory of her talking about painting. Keep in mind, they were best friends. He began asking her questions, obviously confused. He started asking if they were talking and how long they had been talking, things like that. She seemed creeped out and just as confused as he was, telling him that they had been talking for an hour and a half. He didn't understand how that was possible and didn't drop it. She told him he was scaring her and hung up. My cousin doesn't remember how long he was awake thinking about what had happened or when he went to bed, but when he woke up, the first thing that came to his mind was, "What did I say last night?" The two of them had a brief conversation in the morning that ended with her ignoring him for hours and finally telling him that the relationship was not going to work, that it was supposed to make her happy, not hurt her. He didn't ask her about it in the morning because of how she reacted the night before, and they had not talked since March, until yesterday. It is now October, and she said hello to him in the hall. This is the first time they've interacted since the day they broke up. This might be nothing more than a weird coincidence, but I personally see it as a sign that there is something more here than a simple dream. I'm sure lots of different people have lots of different explanations for the lost time, from alien abduction to parallel dimensions. My cousin acknowledges that it could have just been a dream, but is almost certain that it really happened. I 100% believe that he believes what he is saying, and I also believe that he wasn't dreaming. He thinks that he said something that night that caused the girl to end their relationship so strangely and so suddenly. To my knowledge, my cousin has never lied to me or anyone else. He has never had problems with memory loss. I invited him to confess that the story was not true, but he didn't budge. I told myself that if he swore on the souls of our grandparents, whom we were very close to, I would believe him. He did without me telling him to. I specifically share this story because of how many times I've seen people comment on posts with similar experiences. We want to know if anyone else has had similar things happen. Please share your stories. 9. So last night I was getting ready for my dad's Halloween party, and was doing some spooky makeup. I have 2 makeup bags in front of me, and usually my mascara and what I'll call my old eyeliner are in the pink bag. I need the old eyeliner, so I pick up the pink bag and go to reach inside. As I do, I see my mascara, and have the thought, oh yeah, I gotta remember the mascara as well, as I wrap my fingers around them. I hear Solange on my playlist, and then suddenly it's like I lost a moment in time. I get a weird feeling in my stomach and I look around, and I can't remember what I was doing. I've pulled out the entire contents of my pink bag unintentionally. And then I see the old eyeliner on the counter in front of me. Oh, right, eyeliner. And I go to apply it. Then I go for the mascara that I remember having in my hand, and it's nowhere to be found. I look everywhere in my bathroom, even in the toilet and drawers, the trash can. I even do a run around my house in case I, for some reason, yeeted it into the living room at some point. I can't find it anywhere, and I remember the weird lost time moment and the odd feeling I'd had. And then it hits me several days ago. I had put the old eyeliner and mascara in my backpack. I clearly remember the old eyeliner and the mascara being taken out of the pink makeup bag and being put in my backpack because I had gone out, and I had never put it back in the pink bag. At this point I'm freaking out, but I go into my room and open my backpack, and lo and behold, there is a mascara that I had had in my hand just moments before as I pulled it out of the pink bag. I then realized that I had somehow grabbed 2 objects out of my makeup bag that were in fact in the backpack in my bedroom. But not only that, but that I had somehow taken the old eyeliner out successfully. The old eyeliner and the mascara lived together, and I can't imagine I would have put the eyeliner into the pink bag without the mascara, so I'm convinced it was still in there. But even if the eyeliner teleportation part is debatable, I still had the mascara in my hand, and it was in the other room the entire time. Granted, I am jet-lagged, and maybe it wasn't a glitch at all, but the way I experienced it makes me feel like it was a glitch. especially because I distinctly remember wrapping my fingers around my mascara as I thought about remembering to put it on. The weird feeling, the losing a moment of time, and the way I remember the song starting, it definitely felt like a glitch to me. 10. Hello everybody, my name is Laura. I have a story that's happened to me recently, and I can't wrap my head around it. I've come up with all the possibilities I could think of, but nothing seems to suffice. I know there are true believers out there, and I know someone must have a similar story to me. I'm tired of people telling me I'm crazy. This is my story. My friend Adriana and I had to switch cars on this particular day, which was kind of out of the normal. We never switch cars. But I think we were supposed to be together on this night for a reason. The reason I do not know yet, though. Also on this particular day, it just happened to be Friday the 13th, and a full super blood moon. Coincidence? Maybe. But these are the only logical explanations I've come up with. Since we had to switch cars on that day, I had to pick Adriana up from work at a local country club in our town. I brought with me my boyfriend's dog Caesar, who is a French and American bulldog mix. When I picked Adriana up, it was around 10:45 p.m. on a Friday night. Friday and Saturday nights are the main nights for this country club to make money, as they are extremely busy all the time on the weekends. The country club is called Atlantic City Country Club, and it has a long line of history dating back to 1898, and has been claimed to be haunted. Keep that in mind. As I left the country club with Adriana and Caesar in the car, Adriana had realized that she had left her drop-off money for the night in the car, and then we had to go back and bring it to her work. We stopped at her house prior to get clothes because we were having a sleepover at my house that night, so by the time we got back to the country club, an hour had passed. We arrived at 11:45 p.m. When we arrived, there were no cars in the front parking lot, which was odd. Earlier, when I had picked Adriana up, she had told me that a wedding party was going on, and that it was a surprise that she got out early. The banquet employees, which were additional employees called in, were the main reason why she got to leave early. When we arrived, we pulled up to the front. The country club looked the same. However, you could tell that there was not a soul there from the lack of cars and how quiet it was. A wedding party was going on, so you would think there would be noise and a parking lot filled with cars. But there was not. As we pulled up to the front, she told me to sit in the car while she ran in. When she walked up to the front doors were locked and it was dark inside. At this time, we both heard music coming from the side entrance. However, this music wasn't modern-day music. This music sounded like a record player from the 1900s, or at least the 1920s era. We both looked at each other confused. Due to the front being locked, Adriana said that she would go to the side entrance where the music was coming from, because it sounded like that was where the wedding could be. Before she walked to the side entrance, we both heard what sounded like a bunch of men having a serious discussion among the music. As she walked to the side entrance, I got that feeling in my stomach that I didn't want to be alone. It's almost like the air turned thick and I couldn't breathe. But I thought to myself, we're at a public place, where nothing bad could happen. As she walked to the side entrance, I saw her walk to the doors and linger there for a little bit. I saw that she had knocked and waited. I also saw movement behind the blinds in the side area, and it looked like a bunch of figures moving around. After this, she came running to the car in a panic. When I asked what was wrong, she had to calm down to tell me. During this time, the dog started getting irritated and what seemed like uncomfortable. Adriana had told me that when she walked up to the door, she could hear men talking and music in the background. The music was still from the 1900 era. When she knocked on the door, she said the men turned silent, and one man in particular said, "Wait a second, who is that?" in a serious, creepy tone. A tone as if no one should be there or they, or whoever it was caught. Adriana said she got the feeling that she couldn't wait around to see who would open the door. Almost like when your sixth sense is strong, that you need to trust your gut and run the hell out of there. And that's what she did. After she told me this, we got extremely freaked out. and we decided to go around the corner to the employee lot. To our surprise, there was not a single car in the parking lot except for the company car that's always there. Even more freaked out, we decided to take the back entrance to the main road, which goes through the groundskeeper's area. We were going through the groundskeeper's area. Adriana said she has never seen this area before, even though she had worked there for 3 years. In particular, she said a certain building with a light on that we both saw was a building she had never seen before either. The building was old and run down. This was not a building at the high-class modern-day country club. We were so freaked out we didn't even stop. What felt like eternity to get to the main road had only been 5 minutes. There is no way only 5 minutes had passed after all this. At the minimum, at least 30 minutes or so. For the next hour or two, it's all we talked about, trying to come up with a reasonable explanation as to what just happened. This isn't the creepy part. We decided that Adriana was going to text her manager, fellow employees, and the banquet employees to see what was going on the next day. The reason I'm here is because of what happened next. Adriana's manager, other employees, and additional banquet employees all texted her back the next day, claiming they didn't leave the country club until 2 a.m. They also said that the wedding party was so big that there was nowhere to park in all of the parking lots, and that there were jitneys at the front entrance so people wouldn't drive drunk. When this information was revealed to us, we were speechless. Of course, everyone thought we were lying because they claimed there was no way we couldn't find anyone, or that the doors were locked because there was an overwhelming number of people there that night until 2 a.m. The side entrance had also been closed off for remodeling. We were there at 11:45 p.m. to 12:20 a.m., and not a single soul seemed to be there. The only logical explanation seems to be that maybe we entered another dimension or parallel universe, or maybe time-lapsed. I don't know, and it creeps me out. I think about this every day and I can't come up with an explanation. If anyone has any thoughts or suggestions or even reassurance, it would be great to hear. Thanks for listening. 11. Back when I was a freshman in high school, 2011-ish, my best friend moved to California from Ohio. She had this long-sleeve crew-neck t-shirt from an amusement park that we both always loved to share because it was big and comfy. When she moved, she told me to keep it, so after she moved, I had definitely worn the shirt multiple times on multiple different occasions. I knew for a fact that I had that shirt after she moved. One day, after throwing it in the dirty clothes and my mom returned my clean clothes to my room, I realized I didn't have my favorite shirt. I went through the whole laundry room up and down, through all the clean clothes hanging up, the dirty clothes that still needed done, old blankets that were packed away in totes, clothes in the washer, clothes in the dryer. I even went through my little brother's room, dressers and closets, as well as my own, to make sure I hadn't mistakenly already put it away. My shirt was absolutely nowhere to be found. Nowhere. My mom hadn't seen it since she washed it. Flash forward about 7 months. My best friend was back home to visit. The day she was leaving, and we said our goodbyes after spending a couple hours in my room crying, "I'm a baby, I know." I remember the oddest thing ever happened. I walked out into the hall, and right there in my front bedroom door laid my shirt. All balled up, dusty as hell. Really cold, like it was sitting in a fridge or something. And it literally smelled like a dead person was wearing it for all 7 months it was gone. Maybe a little dramatic, but I mean this thing smelled disgusting. And oddly enough, it happened to be laying under one of those little crawl space doors that you push out of your way to access the attic. But as far as I know, no one ever went up there except for my stepdad maybe once or twice. It was the oddest thing. Not trying to say it was creepy, just really weird. Well, here I am, 22 now, and in a different home. I had another favorite work shirt. I'm deaf guilty of having the chair, that you pile everything on as a way of saying it's not quite dirty. I'll probably wear it one more time before washing. And in my profession, I wear a lot of black, so about 85% of my clothes are that color. Once stuff starts piling up, it's a little hard to search for specifics in that pile. A couple weeks back, I was looking for that specific shirt, I had remembered wearing once a couple weeks before, and remembered I had just tossed it aside to wear again. Well, after digging through the pile and almost being late to work, I decided to just look for it later. Searched through the whole pile one by one and never found it. Weird, but okay. Maybe I threw it in my last load of clothes. I cleaned my whole room, taking everything in my pile to basement to do laundry. Ran both loads and figured when I put everything away hanging one by one I'd for sure find it. Nope. So then I'm pissed. I go through every single piece of clothing hanging in both closets, at least 4 to 5 times. I have a lot of clothes. I go through my dresser, look under bed and other furniture. Through clothes I have set aside to sell, check laundry room again, check my little brother's baskets to make sure it didn't accidentally get tossed in with his stuff. I know none of his little girlfriends would take it because most of his girlfriends are pretty small, and my mother isn't in the household any longer. It's a dressier shirt. None of my friends from my friend group would have interest in wanting it. I haven't ever changed out of my work clothes into something else before leaving work at my new place of employment. I go home after work every night, even if I'm doing something after work, change clothes and proceed to what I'm doing. I haven't stayed anywhere recently that I would have left it. I don't recall ever coming home without a shirt. I'm at a loss for words where the hell it would have went. I have asked my friends, but again, they wouldn't even have had access to it if it wasn't on my body. I doubt my stepdad or little 16-year-old brother would want it. I haven't sold any clothing in a while, and even at that, I pack it up and ship it so I didn't accidentally sell it. Sorry for the long story, but literally what the actual hell. I'm at a loss for words. I just want my shirt back. I also thought it might be good to mention that this just occurred to me reading more posts about this disappearing object phenomenon, that something similar actually happened a couple months ago. I have a pair of Kate Spade earrings that I've worn for years. I never changed my jewelry. One night while sleeping, the back must have made its way off and I lost it in my blankets and such. Not a big deal. Specifically, take the earring out and sit it in my makeup table until I get a new back for it. A couple weeks later, I got a new back and went to grab it to put it in, all of a sudden gone. I had seen it every day, same exact place leading up until I actually needed it. I dig and dig through everything on table. It's a little cluttered and messy. Nothing. Chuck it up to loss. A little sad, but change the earrings to another matching set. Probably like 2 or 3 weeks later, there it lays, out of nowhere on the same table I had frantically searched over and over. Right there next to the mirror I had looked in every single day to apply my makeup. Why? So annoying. Hopefully my shirt magically reappears. Update. Forgot to update everyone. So the day I posted this, I went home that night and figured, I have nothing to lose, and asked whatever it was to please return my shirt, like some people with similar stories on here had mentioned. I thought to myself, okay, bet I'll wake up tomorrow and it'll either be hanging in the closet where I've looked a million times, hanging in plain sight, or it'll be on the floor with the other clothes, and I'm gonna be really creeped out. I keep clothes in the floor of my closet because I don't have enough room to hang everything. Sure enough, like clockwork, I wake up and check my closet, and it's laying in plain sight, draped all over the clothes in the floor. Right on top of everything. Clothes that I've already looked through a couple times, and would notice if I laid the damn thing right on top. Annoying, but glad I have it back. 12. I've had many paranormal and unexplained incidents over the years of varying nature and significance and impact. I have even witnessed what I consider to be glitch-in-the-matrix type moments. One example is earlier this year while waiting at a bus stop. I saw 3 almost identical people within seconds of each other. Any gamers here may know how sandbox games such as GTA populate NPCs, and if you travel the map too fast, the memory available used to generate the dynamic surroundings becomes a lot shorter, and uses easier to access data resulting in the same vehicles or pedestrians to generate over and over. These 3 people, the first one was on the bus in the other direction, and got off at the stop opposite from me. A medium-build white female in her 20s with long dark hair. She wore a yellow faux leather jacket, blue jeans, black high boots, and black handbag. She stood out. As she got off the bus, she walked past the shop on the corner, and out came an identical woman, Same clothing with subtle differences such as shade of blue denim trousers. This was extremely odd. What were the chances of two people in this area being in the same place at the same time who happened to be of similar age and build and skin tone, also wearing the same set of clothes? I almost couldn't believe it. Minutes later my bus arrived and I got on where I went to the back, and as I walked to sit down, there was a third female. Same clothes, description. Yes, they weren't the same person exactly, but they were the same in terms of description and appearance. As if three sisters had all gone out together wearing the same clothes, for example. So, with that one example of the many weird experiences I have witnessed mentioned, I hope it gives you perspective to the fact I am not usually thrown by these things. However, this one today has got me. 6 or so months ago, me and my partner of nearly 2 years found our own place to rent. No issues, busy area, and fairly newly built up. But the building itself is only 3 flats per floor times 3 floors, so relatively quiet. A couple months ago, I was heading home from a late shift at work. Hours of darkness, probably 11 to midnight, but well lit with street lights and surrounding building lights. Our property is on the corner, so I can see into our very large, person-size, flat windows which face out onto the road. I happen to look up and there is my partner at the window, in one of her usual nightgowns with her phone in her hand. She sees me and raises her hand up as if to wave. I return the wave and smile, looking away to cross the road. When I look back, she is gone. I'm thinking she's gone to unlock the door, so when I get in the building and come up, I can just head in. So I then get to the door and it's locked. I get inside and lights are off and my partner is in bed, as if she has been for ages, almost asleep. I ask her why she didn't unlock the door and has gone to bed if she just saw me. She didn't know what I meant. And when I explained, she said she's been in bed for ages and never went to the window or in the living room. We discussed this for some time, but I let it go as simple confusion. It was dark. I was tired from work, and the other flats below have the same windows, so maybe I've seen someone else and not realized it wasn't my flat. So tonight I'm in the bath. I know my partner will be home from work soon, 2100 hours or so. She comes in and I hear a knock on the bathroom door, clearly letting me know she's home. I didn't hear anything else as I had my music playing loud. I got out about 5 minutes later to greet her, and she is clearly not happy. I ask her if she's okay, and she sarcastically repeats the question. She's upset with me for sure. I ask her what happened, and she asks why I ran upstairs, communal stairwell leading to the flats. To gain access, you must go through a glass door from the small ground floor car park, which you gain entry to off the main road via a metal pedestrian and vehicle gate, only buzzed in or electric key fob access. I spend some minutes working out what she means, and then we discuss in detail. It turns out that she's seen me run up the stairs through the windows. Windows on each level look into the communal stairwell and can be seen into from the main road. Not the same windows as those looking into the flat I earlier mentioned. And then she hurried into the stairwell to try and come in with me. And as she got to the stairwell, she could hear our front door close. She believed it was me so much she thought I was lying for some reason. The stranger thing is that this version of me she's apparently seen was dressed exactly as I was when I came out of the bath, topless and jogging bottoms. My usual lazy around the house clothes. She was convinced it was me and not someone who looks like but 100% me. What does everyone think or believe? Any and all viewpoints welcomed. Those with or without experiences like this or knowledge on this subject would be appreciated. 13. I don't know if this was a glitch or just my mind being weird, but here it goes. Some years ago, when I was around 18 or 19, me and some friends were hanging around town when we decided to go to one of the guys' homes to watch a movie or so. I have not been there before, but it was about a 20-minute walk from where I parked my car near the city center. So we went to his home, watched a few movies, drank some beers, nothing too special yet. At some point, around 1 a.m. or so, I began to feel tired, and most of my friends had already fallen asleep. I remember sitting on the computer chair watching the movie on the screen, having my feet put up on a small table, which was surprisingly comfortable, so I must have fallen asleep as well, although I don't really remember doing so. The next thing I remember is me walking down the road towards the city center in the middle of the night. I was confused because I didn't remember anything that happened to me in the time gap between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. which was about the time my phone said. I was fully dressed, with neatly tied shoes and all, had all my stuff with me, including a backpack, with all the things in it I took out of there earlier. Nothing was missing. I have absolutely no memory of waking up in the chair, getting up, packing all my stuff, putting on my shoes and jacket looking for keys, going out of the house or strolling down the road or anything else. I knew where I was heading to from the moment my mind became clear, though. I kind of woke up, thinking about going to my car, which is weird because I don't remember even making that decision. Also, I don't really know that area of town that well to remember all the way to my car when I'm half asleep. But I was on the right way, and again I have no memory of how I got there or what happened. My mind kind of popped into consciousness, while I was already acting like I was awake for at least 20 minutes. What was also weird is that the time felt kind of odd. To me, my last memory of sitting in the chair around 1 a.m. felt like it was maybe 30 minutes ago, but it must have clearly been more like 3 hours, although it didn't feel like that at all. Of course, I have considered the possibility of sleepwalking, but never in my entire life before or after that night have I ever experienced sleepwalking or anything else you would consider normal sleep behavior. Neither had my family. I don't think it was because of the alcohol either, because I only drank 3 beers, which was already a while back. And apparently my friends didn't even wake up when I was leaving, which is also weird, considering the noises I must have made. To this day, I can't really explain what happened, and it feels kind of weird thinking about it. Do any of you have any explanation or maybe similar experiences? Thanks for listening. 14. Okay, so when I first found out my front room changed, I woke up like any other day. I played some For Honor for a while, then decided I wanted coffee to help with playing the game a little better. I went downstairs and got a coffee, and as I was making it, my sister called me into the living room to help her set up the new TV. As I walked in, I noticed everything, and I literally mean not a single thing was in the same place. My first comment was, how long did it take you to do this? As I stood next to her at the table the TV was on, she replied saying, how long did it take to do what? I just stood there a bit confused, as though it was obvious what I was referring to. I kinda laughed and said the living room, duh, and a kinda how can you be that oblivious tone. She just looked around and replied, there's nothing different about it, what do you mean? At this point my thoughts were that my family had moved the living room around without telling me, and my sister was trying to prank me. Just laughed and said, very funny, but why did you think that would work? While taking my phone out to look for a photo of my living room, as I was doing this I heard her say you're either crazy or you're still half asleep, as the living room has been like this since we moved in. And like some kind of movie, I found a 2-month-old photo of the living room at the exact point she finished that sentence. I had to look at it for a good few minutes before I realized how crazy what was happening actually was. I have lived in this house for over 2 years. There is no way I would just forget what my living room looked like. I walked back to the kitchen, grabbed my coffee, and went back upstairs, still freaking out about what was happening. I checked everything I could on my way back to my room to see if anything else had changed, but it didn't appear so. I just sat in my room staring at my phone for what felt like hours, looking at every single photo I have of my living room, even videos with my friends and me in there, all showing the same layout. I even started slapping myself to see if I was dreaming. It just didn't seem real. I kept quiet about it and didn't say a word to my family for the last 3 months, and I've tried to ignore it, but I really hate going in there now. Yesterday I decided to invite some friends over while my family was out, just for some drinks and to play some games. I had no intention of asking them about the living room, as I didn't want them to turn around and say I was crazy or something. As we were all about to go upstairs to my room, one of my friends said, your living room looks a bit bigger. I have never felt such a weird feeling in my life. I wanted him to just be saying it as a convo starter, as none of them have been to my house in a while. Then my other friend said, yeah, the sofa is moved around, it looks quite neat. I didn't say a word, I just stood facing the living room, unable to move or even talk. They both looked at me and asked if I was all right, and I started having what I can only describe as a small panic attack. They got me to sit down and were worriedly asking what was wrong and if I needed an ambulance or something, as I was sweating buckets and breathing very heavily. I just looked at them and asked, what do you remember about the old living room? They looked at me puzzled for a second and asked why. I asked them to get a picture of my living room up on their phone, as I couldn't because my hands were shaking like crazy. When they finally got one up, they just stopped, motionless, not saying a word. They just sat down next to me. No one had to say a word, we all knew and were thinking the same thing. After a good 2 minutes, one of my friends just asked me if I wanted to stay or leave and do something else. I just asked if anyone wanted to have a quick look inside, just to make sure this was actually happening and I wasn't crazy. I could sense neither of them wanted to go in, but they both went in and I followed. I asked them to describe where every single piece of furniture that they could remember was originally. They described the exact layout I remembered. I walked out and with shaking hands grabbed one of the beers, and I've never been able to down one as fast as that. We grabbed our stuff and we went to another friend's house and played Xbox there instead. I'm writing this from his house as well, as I still haven't been able to go back to my own home after the realization that actually happened. I'm still absolutely terrified to go home, but I have to later on. I just don't know what to make of it all. Does anyone have an explanation that may have some logic to it? Because I really don't. 15. I don't think there was ever any specific moment that started this feeling. More like it has just gradually grown stronger over time. I didn't associate it with memories until later, though. I've never been good at explaining things, but I'll try my best, as this has been bugging me a long time. So for some years now, every time I have seen or heard something, like a certain melody, an object, or a scenery, I've gotten a weird feeling, like I've experienced it before. I know it sounds like déjà vu, but it doesn't feel like that. It's a different feeling than that, and fills me with something similar to melancholy. Usually I'm able to ignore it and continue whatever I'm doing, but sometimes, especially when I'm alone, I like to kind of throw myself into it and explore that feeling. I was curious. And one time it happened again. I don't quite remember what I was looking at, but I do remember it was an object, probably a streetlight. That's one of the most common things that causes it. In any case, I was looking at it and suddenly an image popped into my mind. It was that of a house. I still remember exactly what color it was, the background, almost everything. Every time I think about it, I feel like crying. I don't know how to describe that feeling, but I don't think it's a nice one. Nevertheless, I more or less became obsessed with that image. I still don't know why it keeps happening, but I wanted answers. I was even so desperate that I went out to look for that house at the middle of the night. It was on summer vacation, and I live in Scandinavia, so the nights were bright, and I wandered around the empty streets for hours crying. I knew I wouldn't find anything, but I wanted to do something about that feeling. It got too bad for me to ignore, and it just didn't leave me alone. Sometime after, I also got an image of a hospital of some kind. But that one was really vague, and I couldn't make out much of it. Now the feeling is back to normal, though, where I can just easily ignore it. And that's about it, I guess. To be honest, I've never thought of it as something real. I haven't lived that long, but I do remember most of my childhood, so it's very likely that those memories don't exist. I tried to look up what could cause it, depression, derealization, etc., but none of that seemed to fit. I considered whether or not I was delusional, but the fact that I don't really believe it to be true kind of refutes it, right? One could also argue that those are memories from my past life, but I don't really believe in that kind of stuff. Now I understand why some people do, though. 16. So about 20 years ago, when my parents were newly engaged, my mom decided to reset a small diamond in my great-grandmother's wedding ring. She inherited this ring when my great-grandmother died a year or two prior, and she always knew that the ring was for her when she got married because of its unique and vintage look, even though it had lost its diamonds years ago. Thing is, she didn't have it in her possession, as my aunt, her older sister, had it at her house for some reason. So my mom asked my aunt for the ring back, and after some pestering, she got it back and had it reset, which apparently looked beautiful. So a few weeks later, my mom started cleaning some cabins, since my family owned a resort, and placed her ring on an end table at my grandparents' home so she wouldn't lose it. When she got back, the ring was gone. She searched everywhere. Asked her mom, her dad, and my dad, and eventually just gave up. She assumed a guest had swiped it while she was away, since the family home was also kind of like the main office for the resort. She was pretty bummed considering she just reset that ring, which cost a bit of money, and that ring meant the world to her. A few months go by and she's cleaning or cooking, I can't remember exactly, and the ring appears again in the exact same spot that she left it. Now this wouldn't be too weird, and it could be written off as someone putting it back, hoping no one would notice. Except she had just looked there and no one else was home. After that it gets weird. My aunt calls her that day and says, "I'm sorry, I thought I gave you Grandma's ring already, but I just found it in my jewelry box." My mom is super confused and tells her that's not possible, since she just found it and she's looking at it right now. They go back and forth for a little, not believing each other, so my mom says, "Fine, come over and I'll show you." She goes over and they compare rings. They are both the exact same ring, with the exact same details, except one has no diamonds in it, just like it looked before it was reset. To everyone's knowledge, my great-grandmother only ever had one engagement ring, and it was pretty unique. They both had also been through her jewelry before, and there was never duplicates. Also, the fact that she found it right before my aunt called makes the entire scenario extremely unlikely. Since then, my mom's copy of the ring has disappeared numerous times, always appearing after long periods of time, in different spots, and sometimes in different houses. I'm unsure what happened to the other ring my aunt found. My mom believes it's spirits messing with her, but it's so strange that I'm wondering if it was a weird glitch in our reality around that ring. 17. Back around 1988, I frequently hung out with a friend of mine who we will call Nico. Nico basically lived out in the country. His house was surrounded by woods and cornfields, with the next nearest house close to a mile away. We had all kinds of fun goofing around, having campfires, building forts, etc. In one part of his yard was a worn-out basketball hoop with a homemade wooden backboard. This hoop was nailed onto a tree, 12 feet off the ground, and was located in the middle of a grassy, bumpy yard with trees all over. I say this because you couldn't really bounce or dribble the ball, as the ground was too soft and uneven. As such, we would play shooting games like horse. Beyond the yard were woods with a much more dense variety of trees. On this particular bright sunny day, we had been shooting baskets for maybe 30 minutes and decided to call it quits. I grabbed the basketball, which was very underinflated, yet still spherical, and followed Nico up to his car parked in the driveway, maybe 25 yards from the basketball hoop. We got up by his car and I jokingly said, $1 million shot, and threw the basketball overhand like a baseball at the hoop, hoping it would make a spectacular shot. I missed to the right and watched the ball roll well past the hoop towards the woods, figuring we would just go retrieve it some other time. Immediately after I threw the ball, I walked towards the front of Nico's car. Nico had gotten into his car to get some smokes and, for some reason that he could not explain, turned on his headlights. I happened to be looking at his headlights when he turned them on, not straight on, but looking down at them from a standing position. At this very moment, my head felt like it was on fire. I could hear an extremely high-pitched sound, to the point that I was in serious pain. The frequency seemed nearly out of the range of human hearing. I closed my eyes and knelt down to the ground in pain. With my eyes closed, I could see what I can only describe as bright pink globules that looked somewhat like capsules that medicine comes in. There were hundreds of them all moving around. Nico, concerned, quickly got out of his car and came up to me. He claims I said something like "I can hear the light," or something like that, which didn't make any sense. The whole high-pitched sound and pink globule thing lasted for about 5 seconds. I then stood up, shaken, and opened my eyes to see Nico standing in front of me, looking concerned. He asked if I was okay. I was still kinda out of it and said I think so. Then, without even looking, I reached down and picked up the basketball, which was directly at my feet, and started tossing it back and forth between my hands. Nico was questioning me as to what happened, what I said, etc. At the same time, we realize I'm holding the basketball that I just threw way out into the yard. Total time from throwing the ball to having it back in my hands was about 20 seconds. I said, "How did I just get this ball?" And Nico's face went white. We looked in the yard, and the ball, which had, after rolling even further away and stopped, about 40 yards, is not there. We are like WTF. We later tried to recreate and debunk this with no luck. He did have another basketball which we found in a shed that looked totally different, so there is no way we mistook one basketball for another one. Also, we tried throwing the ball against a tree the hoop was on, and it basically would not go more than a few feet because it was so flat. So the possibility of it bouncing back off of something like a tree seemed very unlikely. Also of note, no one else was around at the time. And even if someone was trying to play a trick on us, there is no way one could have run out to retrieve the ball and brought it back to where we were in 20 seconds. Also, his driveway was 2 feet higher than the yard, and then sloped down a different direction towards the road. So if someone had tried to roll the ball back towards us from the woods, they would have had to be very skilled to roll it hard enough to get through the bumpy yard, around some trees, then up the slant to the driveway, but not so hard as to roll it right past me. I don't know what happened, but it seems it's somehow based on the high-pitched sound and pink blobs thing I experienced, that I somehow teleported a basketball 40 yards back to me. Maybe not the most exciting story, but it left us scratching our heads. Again, this is just one of several things I have experienced. M. 18. So tonight I received the strangest phone call of my life. It all started when I was on my way to dinner with my boyfriend in his car. I got a notification on my phone that someone, who I did not know, was not friends with, was requesting to talk to me on Messenger. I agreed and read a message that said, "Hi, you don't know me, but I'm trying to find out some things about my partner. Did you ever date Paul Jones?" Using a different name for privacy reasons, perplexed, I replied, "No, I've never heard of him." Her only response was, "Okay, thank you." My boyfriend, being a bit nosy, suggested I ask why she thought I would have known him. I normally wouldn't get involved with other people's business, but thought what the hell, and asked her why she believed I may know her spouse. She then asked me if she could call me because she was shaking too hard. My boyfriend said I should, and at this point, I was becoming more curious, so I told her she could call me. Not a minute later, she calls through my Facebook. I put her on speaker and she told me that her wife left her a few days ago after a 5-year relationship. I believe her spouse was transgender. She told me about how her spouse told her in the beginning of the relationship that she, Paula, dated a girl with my name. I have a very unique first name. It sounds somewhat foreign for my country. And 6 years during and after high school. I wasn't too weirded out until she told me that her spouse had a lot of pent-up trauma over their relationship, because she heard the girl with my name die on the phone after a car accident. Apparently she was on the phone with her when it happened. The girl I was talking to was crying a lot and seemed genuine about what she was saying. She then divulged that she was a funeral director, which was confirmed through her Facebook page, and looked up a death certificate with my full name on it. I didn't exactly gather what the connection was between her looking into her wife's past and her wife leaving her, but I was really taken aback by what she was saying, and didn't have the mind to ask. I apologized for all that she was going through, but assured her I never knew her spouse. I didn't catch the full statement she made before she hung up, but it was something about me enjoying the rest of my life. My boyfriend and I just sort of sat in silence for a second before firing off questions about what just happened. Nothing about that conversation was normal. My boyfriend and I can only come up with 3 scenarios. One, her spouse, Paula, fabricated this story about me for some reason. But she mentioned that there was a 6-year age gap between me and Paula, so how would she have even known me? 2, this girl is insane and either trying to fuck with me or is genuinely delusional. 3, I got a call from a dimension where I died in a car accident. I'm very confused and I'm obviously not very convinced by the 3rd scenario, but I'm just trying to make sense of the phone call I just received. Has anyone else ever experienced anything like this? Another thing that keeps coming to mind is that I pressed her about more context. She would have left it at that until I inquired more about her situation. She also told me that I was the only person with that name, so that's why she asked me specifically. Not only that, but she also implied that her spouse had been somewhat secretive about the relationship she had with the girl who had my same name. 19. So I work at a spot out of town that is in the outskirts, mostly office buildings. No apartments or houses, office buildings. Places to eat and stores, that's about all there is around me. Like I said, it's also quite distant and far from other parts of town, The only thing linking it is the subway and underground metro, whatever you want to call it, and a big boulevard. Basically what I'm trying to say is that the probability of meeting someone by chance here is slim to none. Next thing is, my girlfriend is still studying, and one of her closer friends from university has a sister. I know the friend, but not that much, and I know the sister even less, and I'm definitely not close to either of them. Girlfriend mentions them both occasionally, the friend more often than the sister, of course. I've basically never said anything about the sister in particular, to be honest. So on to the story. Finally. Today I saw the sister post a picture on Facebook. She was around snow, and I got a bit scared because I thought it was snowing in that part of town already. I was hoping the weather would be nice this week. I mentioned that to my girlfriend. Hey, your friend's sister scared me today. I thought it was snowing. And that was that. Just a fun thing to share, but like I said, I've probably barely said anything about her up to this point at all. So I just got back from lunch, and guess who I met on my way there? Well, none other than the sister of my girlfriend's friend. What are the chances of that actually happening? Like, she was actually here, at this point in time when I went to lunch, and that was a mere 2 hours after I mentioned her, for what is probably the first time ever. Nobody gets here just wandering like I established. She said she's meeting a friend, and that's even more strange. You know in the GTA games, especially the older ones like San Andreas or Vice City, you're trying to find a particular car and there aren't any around. But as soon as you get in one, the game has already loaded the model, and you start seeing this car around you all the time. This felt exactly like this. I mentioned this girl I barely know today, so the Matrix just loaded her and sent her my way. Boy, am I weirded out. Thoughts? 20. Alright, so I would typically consider myself a skeptic. But when this happened I felt crazy, like there is no way this could be explained with reason. Alright, let's start at the beginning. 9 years ago I was in Asheville, North Carolina. I had just started amassing a collection of unique playing cards. It was, and still is, just something I enjoy collecting. Finding a unique pack of cards, ones I haven't seen anywhere before. Having a pack of cards from every place I've visited. I love it. I found this particular pack of cards I fell in love with. They were the Beatles' Yellow Submarine cards. I made it a point myself not to play with them too much, because I didn't want to mess them up. My mom and I were moving around a lot at this time, so I tried to just keep them in a box with my other cards, as not to lose any. Well, this box ended up at the house of my little cousin. He was around 3 or 4 at the time. He found the card collection and poked holes in all of them with golf tees. I was in tears. I remember walking around his room, sad because I understood he was too young to understand what he had done. I had lost my card collection, and of course, my absolute favorite cards, the Beatles cards, were mangled to bits. I wasn't going to just throw them away, though. I put them back in the box and hid them away at the bottom of the container, so that I still had them, even if they were unplayable. Fast forward 9 years. I find my old card collection and combine it with my newer one. Never replace the old Beatles cards. I opened up the pack and take a look at the damage that had been done all those years ago. About to contemplate whether I should buy a new pack online. I start flipping through the cards. They're in perfect condition. I'm confused. I keep looking through them. Every single one is in perfect condition. They're looking like they've never been played with a day in their life. I have the memory ingrained in the back of my skull of me holding the cards that had been crunched up, with 1 and 2 holes in each of them. Destroyed with the violence of a child who doesn't know any better. And here they are in my hands in perfect condition again. I was so upset over the Beatles cards being destroyed. There is no way I had mistaken them for other cards. I didn't really care for the others, as they were just basic poker cards that I didn't care about throwing away. I was crying over these cards being destroyed. But here they are, without a scratch on them. Nobody knew about the cards being destroyed besides my mom. And if she were to replace the cards, she would have given them to me, not left them in an open and broken box for me to find 9 years later. It's the most bizarre thing, and probably the one instance in my life where I can say this has to be a glitch in the Matrix. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Glitch Monthly number 4. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Okay, a couple of shoutouts to do before we move on. Shout out to the author of story number 19, Okay, I apologise because I'm certain I'm going to get this wrong, but Gwyn B13id. I'm not sure if there's a proper way to pronounce that, but thank you very much for allowing us to use your story. That was the GTA, people loading like GTA character story. Then also, the author of story number 20, who would also like a shout out, I Just Need Advice 89. They are an artist, a comic artist, and the comic is... I'll link... Okay, I'll link to the website. It's called... What says The Boys? I think it's The Boys Comics or some such. Yeah, The Boys Comics. And the Instagram is also the _boys_comics. I'll link to the website, and that takes you to all the other social media links as well are on there. Cool art style, I think you might enjoy it, so if you want to head over and take a little look. Right, now, the other things I had to discuss. Just regarding the Christmas schedule glitch thing. Right, we'll have one more glitch monthly this year, number 5, and that will be up either on the 28th of November or the 5th of December. Then after that, the next one will be at the end of January. And the reason for that is because at the end of December, old man Hellfreezer wants to see about taking a week off at Christmas. So what I'll need to try and do is, well, maybe more than a week off. I'll need to try and make sure I'm clear from say the 24th through to about the 1st, and that's actually quite doable. So I'm going to take that time off, and that's usually about when I would be putting the next glitch up. So just to let you know, there will be videos out throughout that time. I won't be taking a week off with no videos, but the next glitch monthly will be... the glitch monthly number 6 will be the end of January. There will be one before then, probably end of this month, start next month. Okay. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.